When the face of a Texas mother of 10 appeared on the FBI's most wanted list, everyone was confused. How does a seemingly ordinary woman go from being called a mother, caregiver, and loving wife to being suspected of killing her own 6-year-old son? And then she, her accomplice husband, and their 6 remaining children disappear off the face of the earth like a puff of smoke. Here's the story of the FBI's most wanted woman and her abused son that we still haven't found. Let's get into it. From the outside, Cindy Rodriguez Singh and her husband Arshdeep Singh were just another family in Everman, Texas, a small suburb located in Tarrant County just south of Fort Worth. It's not the most affluent of neighborhoods, but it's not the worst either. Most families there get by on pretty average paychecks, and the crime isn't as bad as it could be, but it's not great either. What I'm trying to say is that everyone there was focused on getting by, keeping their kids in school, and you can't exactly blame a community for missing the red flags in the Singh home, when they were all preoccupied with their own everyday problems. I grew up in a place like this, where people are good and kind, and they're always willing to help if times get tough, but they're making ends meet just like you are, so unless there's serious trouble, they're not sticking their noses into places where it doesn't belong. Sure, the Singhs had lots of kids, but so did a lot of other people. So they weren't exactly out of the ordinary. Arshdeep was a delivery driver, and the kids were all fed, clothed, and as average as their parents were. Before we get to the family's dynamics, we must first discuss their living arrangements. Cindy lived in a 2-bedroom home owned by an elderly man named Charles Parsons. He met Cindy by chance a few years before the crime and after discovering that she and her then 8 children were living out of a car. He allowed them to live in the house in exchange for Cindy cooking for him, driving him to doctor's appointments, and keeping him around the house. It's unclear what Charles's medical conditions were, but it was extremely helpful to have an extra set of hands to help him out, and Cindy was great at taking care of him. He adored the kids and referred to himself as their godfather. If ever there was anything needed, it was usually Charles who made sure that there was a new pair of shoes or a much-needed new backpack for school to replace the ones that were falling apart. In the 2 years of this arrangement, Cindy got married to Arshdeep Singh and got pregnant again with a set of twins. Obviously, this arrival stretched their already cramped home to its limits. They erected a shed in the backyard and converted it to a large bedroom for the older children, complete with air conditioning, ventilation, and electricity. Reports indicate that her oldest child was just 11 years old. I don't want to sound like I'm against large families, quite the contrary. For the most part, a large, responsible, happy, and warm household is one of the best upbringings that a kid could ask for. But as you'll soon discover, Cindy was not any of these things. This monster doesn't deserve to have children. According to statements from authorities, Cindy had a history of concerning alcohol-related incidents. The FBI are being a little vague about her criminal record, given that this is an ongoing investigation. But from what we can tell, there was an incident in 2020 where Cindy wrecked her car with some of her children in the back seat while heavily intoxicated. This was not the first time that Cindy was in hot water for her excessive drinking while the children were in her care. It appears that 3 of the 4 children in the car at the time of the incident were taken away from Cindy and sent to live with their maternal grandmother, while the youngest, 6-year-old Noel, was sent to live with a foster family for a year, leaving 4 children still in the home. Apparently, CPS had been called in to check on the kids before, so with her history taken into account and the fact that her drinking put them in a great deal of danger, Cindy was slapped with a 10-year probationary period, where CPS was tasked with visiting the home on unscheduled visits to keep an eye on the situation. It's after this time that Cindy gave birth to the twins, bringing the total back up to 7 kids in the house. Noel Rodriguez-Alvarez was the 6-year-old in question that CPS was worried about most. He was returned to Cindy's care after spending a year with his appointed foster family. Little Noel had chronic lung disease, which required that he be driven to doctor's appointments regularly and that he have a constant supply of oxygen on hand in the home, not to mention a strict regimen of medications. Noel also had developmental disabilities. Official statements only describe him as severely disabled and requiring a high level of care. So the exact diagnosis or severity of Noel's developmental disabilities are not very specific. The lung disease was incredibly concerning though. A small thing like a common cold could kill him if Cindy wasn't careful, and given that the house was full to the brim, well, you can see why CPS was concerned that his care would be neglected. Tragically, it later came out that Noel's foster parents absolutely adored him, and they offered to continue to care for Noel for longer. Noel's maternal grandmother also reached out to take him in while Cindy got her life together, but Cindy refused and CPS allowed Noel to go back to his mother. There were so many people who were willing to shower little Noel with love and care, and still, he got returned to a mother that possibly planned to kill him for months. Just a few months after he was returned to his mother, on March the 20th, 2023, CPS came around to do an inspection of the house and of Noel. They'd received an anonymous call reporting that Noel appeared to be malnourished. It had been 6 months since the call was placed, right around the time the new babies would have arrived, but CPS hadn't gotten around to checking in until March. 7 of the 8 kids were accounted for and in good health, all except for Noel. Cindy claimed that after giving birth to the twins, her hands were understandably full. In order to make sure that Noel received the appropriate personal care that he needed, he was sent to Mexico, to his father. Cindy was extremely helpful, provided them with contact information on the father, and gave them a tour of the property. The problems came the very next day, on March the 21st, when CPS called up Noel's dad in Mexico. He was very confused, having had no knowledge of this arrangement. Actually, he'd never even met his son at all. Noel was born right after he'd been deported back to Mexico, and he wasn't even aware of his extensive medical problems. Unfortunately, the 48 hours between the visit and the phone call to Noel's father was all Cindy needed to make her getaway. Cindy, Arshdeep, and the 6 remaining children were gone. All of them were aged between 5 months and 11 years old. The house was in shambles. It looked like they packed in a hurry and took only what they could fit into suitcases. There was one strange detail about the house though. Inside, they found a shrine to Santa Muerta, the demon deity of death, and several figures of worship were littered around the house. Santa Muerta is a controversial religion that stems from Haiti and South America. It glorifies death and is considered by many, including the Catholic Church, as devil worship. It's not a particularly widespread religion, and most people find chicken and goat sacrifices rather distasteful, but it does attract a great number of individuals with dark obsessions and is popular among drug cartels and gangs. Practitioners call on demons, believing that their possession will protect them from harm, bring luck and fortune, and that these entities can even make them invisible. Whether you believe that it's a valid cultural religion that deserves recognition, or if you're of the mind that it's a violent cult, no one can deny that Santa Muerta is a deeply disturbing practice that has a habit of attracting mentally unstable individuals, and as we'll learn later, Cindy definitely had leanings towards believing that demons were somehow to blame for her troubles. So everyone who knew them was brought in for questioning to try to make sense of the Singh household. Turns out, Noel hadn't been seen since the previous November, meaning that he'd been missing for at least 5 to 6 months already, and nobody even noticed. Charles confirmed that Noel went missing shortly after the twins arrived and said that in the weeks that the babies arrived, Noel wasn't handling the new additions well. He threw tantrums, withdrew, and refused to eat, resulting in a significant amount of weight loss. According to Charles, he felt very sorry for Cindy and Arshdeep, who were struggling with juggling the new babies and Noel all together. Cindy's brother and mother had much more concerning stories to tell though. She told her mother that she'd sold her son. On another occasion, she claimed that Arshdeep beat Noel regularly, and there was an incident where she refused to give her son water because she didn't want to change his diaper. Neighbors came forward stating that they'd seen Cindy hit her son with a set of car keys. Other relatives reported that Cindy referred to Noel as evil and possessed by a demon, and that she was afraid that his demons would harm the new babies. The family's movements in the 48 hours after the CPS visit was very telling. The next day, Arshdeep stole $10,000 from his workplace while Cindy pulled the kids out of school early under the guise that there was a family emergency. After that, they took to the road, and the family's gray Chevy was traced to Dallas-Fort Worth Airport. They then took a flight from Texas to Turkey for a short layover, after which they boarded again and landed in India, where Arshdeep still had direct family. Now, it doesn't take a genius to put the pieces together. No family is going to flee the country while their son is missing, nor would they have lied about his whereabouts to authorities if they weren't guilty of anything. But for the time being, there was no evidence that Noel was deceased, just that he was gone. The couple were officially charged with false reporting, negligence, and abandonment of a child, even if they weren't in the country to be arrested for the crime. Cadaver dogs were brought to the property to search it, and their Chevy, abandoned at the airport, was searched. There was nothing to be found in the car or by the dogs at first. It looked like Cindy had put the wheels in motion to flee to India 5 months before they fled the country. All of her and Arshdeep's documents for travel were in order, and the children's passports were organized during this time. She applied for visas for all of the children still in her care, all except for Noel. If anyone had any questions about where Noel was, she just spun them the lie that Noel was with his biological father to buy herself enough time. The last child's visa was approved a day after CPS visited the home, and it was that morning that Arshdeep stole the money and Cindy collected the kids from school. A month after Noel was last seen, Cindy paid a construction company $5,000 to tear down the newly erected shed that the family so desperately needed and had a concrete slab thrown down in its place. Detectives realized that the concerning behaviors didn't start in October, which was the last time that Noel was officially seen alive. When they looked into their electronics and medical records, it became clear that Cindy wasn't taking Noel to his doctor's appointments since July. That's a whole 3 to 4 months before he was last seen by his neighbors and family. She'd been sent a warning from the clinic where he was being treated sometime in November, threatening to report the matter, which would result in her benefits being taken away. Cindy attempted to convince a friend to allow her to take the friend's child so that the boy could pose as Noel, just so that Cindy wouldn't lose the support check. Thankfully, the friend wasn't an absolute dirtbag and refused to let her son be used as a pawn. If you're wondering why the friend didn't report it, she too was under the impression that Noel was with his father, but that Cindy and her huge household couldn't afford to lose that check every month. The belief is that Noel disappeared in October, right around the twins' birth, but that Cindy had started withholding medical care and food from him since July, cemented by the fact that the call to authorities about the welfare of Noel by November recorded that he looked malnourished and that he appeared to be very ill. If he'd been taken off his treatment plan, he would have slowly digressed, becoming sicker and sicker every day. This is why the FBI believed that Cindy had planned Noel's erasure long before the twins were born. A tip came in from a neighbor that saw Arshdeep throw away an old carpet a day before they flew to India. Luckily, police were able to locate it. That carpet used to be in the shed where the older children slept, but was moved back into the house after the demolition. The cadaver dogs made a hit on the carpet and on the concrete slab. Actually, they didn't just hit on the concrete. They went absolutely berserk when they pulled up the slab and started digging under it.
Today, police released a video from previous searches for Noel Rodriguez-Alvarez. This was from a piece of carpet that police recovered. They say it was thrown out by Noel's stepfather before the family fled the country. There are also some new investigators.
This video is from the last full search in April. However, it was just released by Everman police. It shows cadaver dogs sounding off an alert behind the home where Noel's mother mysteriously had a concrete patio poured. Investigators say,
"We know for certain that there was no body under the concrete, but they let slip that items were found that were sent away for forensic testing, and they searched all of the wooded or abandoned area around the neighborhood." A month after the family fled the country, and a week after searching under the slab, a statement was put out that this was no longer a missing persons case. It was now a search for remains. They believed that Cindy had intentionally killed her disabled son and that she planned it well in advance. Many believe that Cindy might have suffered from severe postpartum depression or postpartum psychosis, and that she might have fallen apart mentally after the twins were born. But I need to remind everyone that postpartum depression relies on the word post, meaning after the fact. All evidence suggests that Cindy was actively neglecting and abusing her son months before she gave birth. After spending 2 years working with Homeland Security, there hasn't been a single hit as to where the family might be hiding, where Noel's body might be, or what happened to him. Cindy was placed on the FBI's most wanted list in July 2025. According to Noel's foster family, he was their cool little dude who loved wearing his sunglasses, who never stopped smiling, and who begged to stay with them when he was told he was going back home. They say that despite his developmental delays, he was a shining ball of love and cuddles that no one could resist. The only time they ever saw him upset was when he learned that he was going to be sent home. Noel was failed by the system. He was failed by everyone around him, and most terribly of all, he was failed by his mother and stepfather. There is very little hope that Noel's still alive out there. That is just the sad reality of all of this. Cindy and Arshdeep have been hiding successfully for 2 years now. Somewhere in the maze of 1.4 billion people, they're hiding in plain sight. All we can hope for now is that the 6 children with them are healthy, safe, and well, and that little Noel can someday be laid to rest with the respect and love that he deserved all his life, but never got to have. I don't know about you guys, but this one just made my heart hurt. I thought I was in for a manhunt for a drug lord or some crazy spy shenanigans. Instead, I got hit with a tragic tale of a sweet little boy who was almost certainly starved, beaten, neglected, and killed by his own mother. Here on Evidence Obscured, we're willing to dive into the strange, the unsolved, and even the most disturbing cases for you. Don't be afraid to leave your suggestions in the comments below if there's a case you'd like us to look into next. And while you're at it, leave a like and don't forget to subscribe. See you in the next one, people. Shares.